I've been known to do some gaming in my spare time.
Most of it last minute.
Always last minute. But I always do a lot of it. I played Control, which was the most recent Remedy Entertainment game. And it was published by 505. It released in 2019 for PS4, Windows, Xbox One. And then it was re-released for PS5 and Xbox Series consoles in February 2021. There were also cloud versions for the Switch, Amazon Luna, and the Stadia. And there were a couple of expansions released as well. So this follows the Federal Bureau of Control, the FBC, a secret U.S. government agency tasked with containing and studying a phenomenon that violates the laws of reality. You play as Jesse Faden, played by Courtney Hope, who is a Remedy Entertainment veteran at this point. They really like getting scans of her body for these games. That's all I'm saying. Same.
I was going to say, can you blame them?
No.
Okay.
You play as Jesse Faden, the Bureau's new director who explores the oldest house, the FBC's paranormal headquarters, and you do gameplay things. The rest of it is just reading too much Wikipedia article.
And then game and stuff.
And then the game happens.
There's game in this game.
Yeah. To be fair, a lot of my games don't include game.
True. Very true.
So, yeah, this is, I would say, a spiritual successor or sequel to Quantum Break. There are a lot of very similar gameplay elements and evolutions, as well as a lot of conceptual ideas and themes or adjacent things. So Quantum Break was about time. This game is about reality. Holy shit. And like every Remedy Entertainment game, it has a whole butt ton of Alan Wake references, because of course it does. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the cast members in common, because it's a fairly small studio. So yeah, the story bits. There's a lot. And also there's nothing. My brain hurts. So yeah, you walk into this building and you're like, I am here. Why am I here? And then you do a lot of stuff, and then you're like, holy shit, we're in a game now. Things happen. Action happens. You're like, whoa. It's hard to describe this game without just describing every single frame.
Doesn't she walk in for like a job interview and then suddenly becomes the new director? Or am I remembering it wrong?
Yes and no. No, not actually, but that's what Ashti, the janitor, says. Because it turns out that the janitor is kind of the actual head of the place. It's weird. Yeah, this game hurts my head mostly in a good way. Yeah, basically the story is you play as Jessie, who has been on a lifelong search for her brother, who during a paranormal supernatural incident when they were children was taken by the spooky feds, basically. And she has spent her entire life trying to find the spooky feds to find her brother.
Fox Mulder?
Yeah.
Ooh, Dana Scully can kidnap me.
Oh my gosh.
Or the Fringe Division. Anna Torv can kidnap me too.
Jeez, dude.
I like my weird TV shows.
I know. So do I.
Get stranded on an island and it's actually purgatory?
Shh, don't remind me about Lost. Shut up. Yeah, so that's a bunch of... There's further spooky, weird backstory that's mostly explained through in-game dialogue and a lot of obscure references to stuff. The game starts in media res, my least and favorite thing in the world, where the game goes, shit's happening, fucking deal with it, we'll explain later, and then kind of doesn't explain later.
It kind of does.
Kind of does and it kind of doesn't. The story primarily is about you becoming the new director, fighting the Hiss, which is an invading force taking over the FBC, killing, people, and taking control of them and making enemies for you to fight. Because they're trying to take control of the building and the stuff in the building. And then it also turns out that there's like an ancient primordial ooze in the basement that's been there since before the building was there. That's a whole thing.
Does it create turtles?
No turtles. I wish there were turtles. If this turned into a Ninja Turtles game, I would lose my shit.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be so weird. Turns out she's April O'Neil. Fuck you. That'd be crazy. That's kind of the gist of the story. There's a lot of specific details. You go through the building, learning things about the organization, the building itself. The oldest house is, I think the real protagonist of this game is the FBC. It's The most interesting stuff and the most, I would say, plot driver and interesting story elements are about the setting and the organization, and not Jessie. And I think that kind of pulls interest away from her story, because during certain parts of the story, her choices are not my choices. She has different motivations than I do when playing the game, and sometimes they come into very clear conflict where some character is like, I'm going to explain this thing, and she's like, shut the fuck up, I don't care, where's my brother? And I'm like, you dumb bitch. Why would you do that to me? I'm not sure how it ended up happening in terms of like a developmental level, because this was kind of Remedy's magnum opus. Every new game is your new magnum opus, but like this was a really big deal for them to be free of Microsoft's influence for Quantum Break while carrying over a lot of really cool ideas that they had and upgrading them and doing them a lot better. But there's some choices they made where I think they overthought it, and that's rare coming from me, I know. An easy example would be Jessie's character design. She just is wearing like normal street clothes with like a cool leather jacket, and she has bright red hair. Her thematic importance to this world, the law and order created within the oldest house, she is the chaotic element coming in to fuck shit up. And if she didn't have red hair, she would kind of just look like she works there. And I think that the idea that they had, I saw in some interview, was that they wanted her to look like she has been trying to blend in her whole life and like get information and like kind of, you know, do odd jobs and then scoot. So she's trying to be on the DL. But that doesn't really make for an interesting character model. It falls into the same problem that Quantum Break did, where Jack Joyce visually is not really that distinct. It's a high-quality character model, and they look cool, but not cool enough. Whereas Jack Joyce was supposed to be this guy who randomly fucking walked into this mess and then just had to learn how to have god powers. She's kind of in a similar situation, but she's been chasing it, and then she doesn't have the reactions to new information you would expect. And I think the most distracting part of the story for me is her personal motivations don't track with the plot, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to not get into specifics because it'll take 18 hours to explain. But like, there's a lot of specific choices she makes that are really, they don't go in the interesting direction, and I think it contradicts some of her later character motivations, because she does change over the course of the game, and I like the direction they take her in, where there's a couple of offhanded lines about her being like, I don't know what's going on, but like I kind of feel comfortable here. I actually like this. I'm happy to be here, even though I don't even know what I'm doing. And there's some really interesting things to ponder about that. But it kind of gets contradicted when in two scenes she's telling people that she just needs to get her brother so she can leave. It's really weird. Lore-wise. Oh my god. It's so hot. It's so hot. There's so much shit. This game goes fucking nutty, man. Like, absolutely bonkers. Badonkadonking crazy.
She doesn't show her badonkadonks.
I wish she did. I'm going to cut this out. The way I was mentally making a placeholder while I was trying to get accustomed to the game, because it took so fucking long to get used to, is I was thinking about, you remember that it's the airport that the Department of Truth keeps their shit in, that they're like, not enough people think it's real, but some people think it's real, so it kind of shifts itself around.
With the lizard people in the basement, right?
Yeah, it's the one where it's like, it's not real, and we don't think it's real, but we will use it. But if anyone walks in, they're just going to see an abandoned airport. Yeah. That's what I was thinking of as a mental placeholder for this, because it just made sense.
Weird.
Yeah, so basically the Federal Bureau of Control is the spooky FBI. They find all the weird reality-breaking things, the supernatural, weird, spooky stuff, and then they're like, we're going to shove it in the biggest box in the dungeon because we want to study it and get science and also control.
There's mushrooms and ooze.
There is also mushrooms and ooze in the basement. That's a whole thing. So they exist in this really, really cool base called the Oldest House. It's such a weird name, but it's like this inverted triangle pyramid building that exists in plain sight, but only if you want to see it. So it can exist. It's like the Men in Black headquarters, whereas no one suspects it's really there, but if you know what you're looking for, you know the address, you can find it. And then you go in and you're like, this looks like a normal office building, and it is a normal office building, but it's about things that are not a normal office building. So the you start out the game going through like metal detectors and seeing regular security memos, don't let this person in the building, make sure you're double checking purses, like normal, the feds. And then the big linchpin for this game where it makes a really strong first impression, like the 10-minute rule for like video games, 10-15 minutes, where it's like if it doesn't hook you by the end of that, put it down. Is a small thing, but I noticed it because I was actually trying to pay attention for once in my life. When you go in, it's a normal building. You're like, this is weird. I don't know why I'm here, et cetera, et cetera. You're just following the game prompts. And the metaphor that the game starts with is really heavy-handed, but it's great. And it's about like you as a person. You're focusing on a poster in a room. And behind the poster is a portal. And no one knows the portal is there because they're always looking at the poster. And it's like an analogy for like the building and also the Federal Bureau of Control, because people know it exists, but they don't really know what it does. So like you go into the portal and then you meet the janitor and he's like, oh yeah, you're here for the job interview, whatever, go down the hall to the left. He's weird. He's Finnish, where Remedy is from. So they're having a lot of fun with that. And then there's the last line of dialogue he says to you in the opening. He's reading your fucking mind. He responds to the thing you thought to yourself out loud. And it's hard to catch unless you're paying attention. Because the player, Jesse's like, he's weird, third shifters are strange overnight folk, but he has a nice face. And then he responds out loud, it's better to have a nice face than no face at all. Which is very sussy shit for later. And then when you go down, you go through the elevator, the building repeats itself. Mm-hmm. And then you go down the same corridor that you just came from, except it's a little different and there's an elevator. And you can't go backwards. If you try to backtrack, it goes to a dead end. And it's so weird. You can just go through that without even noticing. But if you're paying attention, it's fucking crazy shit. And sadly, the rest of the game doesn't do that quite as much. It's the sort of. The idea is that the building shifts. It's explained later, but like the building shifts through reality and space. There are certain parts of the building that are safe rooms so you can not die. And there are like control points, like the skeleton of the building, kind of. They'll be scattered around. So no matter where the building shifts to in reality, there will always be some things you can go back to, which I'm sure makes the 9-to-5 day really shitty. But it's a really cool introduction to the idea of shifting, whereas you don't see it visually happen, but it gives you an idea of what you're in for. And the game doesn't really do that ever again, but
you went through the infinite room, didn't you?
Outside of specific spaces.
Oh.
It doesn't just change the game map on you, because that would be a technological nightmare. It doesn't. Okay. It doesn't. It's tricking you into thinking it does, but it doesn't. There are a couple of kind of infinite spaces in massive quotations, but like whatever. So it's just about you discovering what the hell's happening here. What's this weird invading force? Finding people who work here, asking them lots of questions, finding out why are you the director now? What is this weird weapon you have that you found in the old director's office? What's this gun? Why is the old director talking to me inside my head? Blah, 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 blah. Lots of spooky mystery stuff. And it's all done really well through notes, letters, audio logs, in-game video files, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that Remedy does pretty much better than anybody else. I believe when I explained Quantum Break, I said that the story on paper, when you lay it all out on a technical level, is really cool and really high effort, and it makes a lot of sense. But the way it's presented makes it kind of hard to follow. I want to say the Control has the same problem, but it doesn't. It's hard to describe because the game throws you through for such a loop, and it took my brain so long to like figure out what the hell was going on and stuff. And not everything ever ends up making sense. There's some things that just will not make sense. There is not an answer. They just refuse to give you one. But the game really encourages you to go find the notes and the audio logs, whereas Quantum Break, they were there as flavor text. Like you would go interact with the note on the wall, and then it would come up on screen and you could read it. No one reads those. That type of flavor text doesn't encourage you to read it. It just comes up, especially when you can see in engine, you can see the note on the wall. Like it has enough resolution to look at it. Whereas Control, the way that the locations of the different pieces of paper and notes and stuff, and the intrusions from the old director specifically encourage you to go through your notes about specific things. So say you'll get a flash of the old director, you'll only hear some key phrases and words, and you're like, what the fuck was that? It tells you, go into your notes, go watch the whole video, because you can find it. It does that a lot for everything, and it really encourages you to go actually do exploring, not for the sake of completion, but because you want answers. And I think it makes it more... I just think the individual notes are done better. Might be a better way of putting it. Because it gives you some answers, and then it refuses to give you other ones, but it doesn't just give you random bullshit. Quantum Break has a lot of cool stuff that I think is neat, but there is a lot of just like... It is a paper that shows you a formula, and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Right.
And there isn't really an answer that makes it, that it's relevant to you. It's just, it is flavor text. It's cool, but it doesn't help the story build up that much. And I think Control does that a lot better. I think that just the general number is lower. I don't know that for sure. I am about 80% of the way through the story. I did a big binge last night to get through a lot. And I still have kind of this pit in my gut that the finale is not going to pay off as much as I want it to. I don't know how else to explain that. So yeah, gameplay. It's a Remedy game. They all have a very similar feel to them in a good way. It's a third-person, over-the-shoulder shooter action-adventure game. A good direct comparison for this, in terms of its exploration and kind of its leveling system, is it kind of feels like Fallen Order, which released the same year, and there's even some animations that look extremely similar, like opening up boxes. Like, it's almost the same. The noise is similar. There's a closeness there, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a weird similarity I noticed in my brain. Yeah, so the gunplay that's introduced is you're given this service weapon, all caps, and it's a gun, it's like a handgun, but then later you can get upgrades, and then it's not a handgun, it's like a shotgun, and then it's like a machine gun, and then it's like a sniper rifle, and it's really fucking cool. I really like this gun. The problem that Quantum Break had, it really is hard not to compare the two, is that they were very boring stereotypes of guns. They all functioned great, and I enjoyed the gunplay, but there was no specifics to them, really. It was just sniper rifle, go bang, and then machine gun, go brrr, whereas these guns have a lot more nuance in their operation and in their stats.
The pistol goes pow, 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 pow.
Yeah, like even the UI changes based on what gun you're using.
Yep.
Because the reticle. You can change it with the flick of a switch, and it tells you without aiming down sights exactly which mode you're in, so you can get prepared. It lets you know what your ammo counter looks like. Also, it regenerates ammo automatically, which, because it's a stupid sci-fi gun, of course it should. Scavenging for ammo in this game would be nuts. I would hate it so much. You get the different types of service weapons at different intervals of the game. I think they're all paced out pretty well. I like using most of them. I always keep the handgun version active because it's pretty universal. I usually alternate between the machine gun and the shotgun version. The sniper rifle one kind of comes in handy, but I don't use it often enough, except for other snipers. And the upgrade / progression system is primarily focused on changing stats for the different types of weapons. Some of the mods that you get are specific to each weapon, like a choke for the shotgun version where it pulls in your accuracy, or a higher rate of fire for the machine gun, stuff like that. Most of those were fine. I have mixed feelings on the progression system in general. It kind of feels unnecessary, but it's not so large that it feels egregious. A lot of the upgrade materials to make mods are just collectible item number 375. It's this type of material. There's no real coherency as to why you need what material for this new mod or weapon version.
But to be fair, the gun is made out of Legos. So
it is. It seems a little silly when it's like, I don't even remember the types of materials. It's like the little mini hobbits and then dead baby spirits. Like, there's no logic to where you'll find them or in what amounts. It's just kind of there from completing missions, side missions, or opening up collectible boxes. So it's fine.
How did your brain go from hobbits to dead baby spirits?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
So the gunplay is very good. It feels pointed. It's snappy enough that it doesn't drag down gameplay, but it's not so weightless that it feels like I'm just running through areas gunning people immediately. Even with a lot of stat increases and on weak enemies, it's still a level of challenge. You can still die from being stupid. Your additional powers that you get are based on your somehow immunity to the building's reality warping bullshit. I still haven't gotten to the answers on that one. So you get upgrades like evading, which is just a forced dodge. Honestly, the Jedi comparisons for this game are strong. A lot of your powers just feel like being a Jedi, whereas like you can grab objects and throw them. I'm pretty sure it's the same button as Fallen Order as well. It's just a coincidence, but it does, like most of your powers in this game make you feel like a Jedi. Just saying. You can levitate at a certain point in the game to get over objects. Stuff like that, which are all fine. A lot of them are also OP as hell. Like grabbing and throwing objects is ridiculously overpowered, especially if you put any additional stats into it or modifications. You can just sit in a room and throw shit at people and then everyone's dead. So you kind of have to mentally go, I should use a gun because it's fun, which I think is definitely a major gameplay overstep. Evade also takes away from your basically force energy, which I don't like. I think evade should be a separate thing. If evade is supposed to kind of be coming in clutch at the end to make sure you dodge a rocket or whatever, I don't think that should be on a meter that's already been expended by you using your weird magic reality powers. So I didn't end up using evade very much after I got it, unless I had to for the sake of a level.
Unless you're not supposed to be spamming your force powers, and you leave some force for evade.
But the thing is, the game really likes flexing how fucked up the rooms are when you're done throwing shit. Like, that's the biggest part of the game is like, wow, look at all the damage you did.
Wow.
So it's kind of weird. Enemy types are fine. They're all serviceable. The hiss, the evil entity that makes people basically zombies, is fine. I wish there was more variety in the character designs. The gameplay is mostly serviceable. It does have too many types that are just guys with guns, which is annoying. They all kind of act the same. There's sniper rifle guys, there's handgun guys, there's machine gun guys, there's a guy with a minigun and a shield, and that's just kind of too much. The other enemy types I think are all pretty cool, whereas you'll get like hiss elevated. They're like floating upside down possessed demon people, and they'll explode if they get near you. Like stuff like that I think is really cool. There's, I don't remember what it's called, but there's a type where it goes invisible and then you have to use a shield. Like you have to pull rubble up as a shield to deflect it before you can start killing it because it's invincible when it's invisible. Like those sorts of things are really cool. They don't use them as much as I wish they did. Mini bosses kind of fall into the same category and regular bosses. Some of them are fine and serviceable. None of them are egregious or boring. They're just, some of them are kind of underwhelming. They can get a little bullet spongy because a lot of enemies past the midpoint of the game have shields that you have to drain before getting into their health bar, which is just stupid. Movement is fun. This game fixes my biggest complaint with Quantum Break, which was that the movement speed was tailored to what segment of the game you were in. You couldn't sprint all the time. The jump mechanic was busted. The climb mechanic was busted, and there was no crouch button. This game fixes all of that. It's fast. You can just sprint full force up flights and flights of stairs looking at her fat dumpy move, and man, does it just go. The truck does not stop moving. It just goes, and I love that. One, because it's fun to look at, and also just because the game doesn't try to extend the gameplay longer than it has to be. The world that it builds is big enough for the setting. It doesn't feel the need to artificially slow you down. It doesn't matter if it's a stealth section or a action scene. You can just bolt, just run. You can just dodge whenever you want, and I really like that. You can also jump and climb on things, which becomes pretty relevant for a lot of sections when the house is doing shenanigans and you have to go bounce around and jump over shit. I really appreciate the level design on the whole. I think it was the part of the game that's the strongest for the gameplay section. The levels all feel pretty well, not manicured, but curated, just based on enemy placement, collectibles, hallways, big rooms, battle areas, and so on. The levels all feel really well designed and intricate. They're spaced out well, and they're fun to navigate again for a second time. This is kind of just a Metroidvania. I just don't feel like addressing those elements very much because I don't care. You go back to areas constantly. There will sometimes be new enemies, sometimes there aren't. Sometimes you have to have new powers to get to a certain collectible or whatever. And
or
I think
entire hidden boss fights.
there's a fair few of those, yeah. And I like that the game doesn't force you to interact with it if you don't want to. You can just kind of go through it. It also does make you backpedal just to go to different areas. You can use fast travel after you've cleansed a control point, which is effectively the game's checkpoint system. Those are well spaced out as well. So that cuts down on travel time a little bit, but I don't feel bored when I'm running through areas I've already been through before because there might be new enemies, there might be some new interactable shit, and it's just fun to be in. That's gameplay. Presentation. Certified banger. No notes. The biggest thing for me is the sound design and audio mixing. I play with headphones, and the game is spooky, and it doesn't need to be spooky, and there aren't even that many spooky enemies, and there are no jump scares. But the game really puts me on edge all the fucking time.
The hiss are unsettling.
They are. It's in the name. There's always a noise in the room. There's always a hissing or a murmur or a weird amount of people talking, and it's fucking spooky. I appreciate that it doesn't try to pull any fucking annoying jump scare bullshit. Even in cutscenes, which are few and far between, it just makes you go on edge, and I really like that. It blends well with the reality warping, weird stuff going on. It makes you feel uncomfortable, but it doesn't try to scare you. The mixing in and of itself is really good. I think there aren't quite enough audio tracks of the hiss and their noises because it definitely feels repetitive after a while. I had a few play sessions where I did put on some music because I knew I was going to be in a big gameplay section. But the guns and attacks all sound really good. They're distinct and cool sounds. They don't sound repetitive, even though I'm spamming throw rock 50,000 times in a room. It doesn't get old, which I really like. The hiss sound cool. When they die, they sound cool. They make weird death noises. The environment has a lot of noises to it. It echoes when you're in a big atrium. It sounds different when you're on rock versus when you're on marble versus when you're jumping on couches. Like, just general detail work is very high. The music is really, really good. I don't know who composed the score, but it's fucking great. Whether it's in cutscenes, the loading screens, or just general gameplay, the music is really good. The cutscenes, like I said, are few and far between, and I think it's the area where the game kind of has it's a bit lackluster. The cutscenes are primarily shot, reverse shot, medium conversations. It feels like a Ubisoft game. And as a former Ubisoft game fan, I don't hate it, but it could have been a lot more inventive. I give Quantum Break a lot of props for that. A lot of its cutscenes were wild. Even the dialogue scenes had a lot of unique camera angles and stuff going on. And I think Control really wants you to focus on the story and the characters, so I get why they didn't want to make it too flashy. The wall between cutscenes and in-game cutscenes versus pre-rendered cutscenes versus gameplay is thin, like most good games, honestly. The walls between the paper walls are very thin. You can see through them, but it's just kind of disappointing. When you're mostly doing a lot of exposition hunting, you're like, where's a person who can answer my fucking questions? And then you ask them 10 questions in a row, and you're just like sitting in a boardroom. It's fine because it does show off how really well detailed the character work is, even though there's a very small cast. A lot of them have extremely unique presentations. They have really well done voices. They have little quirks. Like the main character that you're going to interact with the most, what's her name? Hope. One of the people that you interact with a lot to come back to for new missions and quests and whatnot, who's like trying to regain control of the building. She's really nervous, so she doesn't look at you in the eyes a lot. Like, she'll be explaining stuff to you with confidence because she's smart, but she kind of looks at the floor, or she'll look at the ceiling, or she'll look past you, and like stuff like that I think works really well in cutscenes. People fidgeting with things in their hands or being nervous. The vocal intonations are really strong, which is cool. Yeah, vibes are good. like wicked good. At very few times does it feel like my immersion is broken or like I get bored of being on edge. It does just enough to make me uncomfortable, but not to make me not want to play. I have put in about 12 hours, I would say, so far. According to the internet, the average completion time is between 14 to 20 for like story completion. There are 2 DLCs included in the Ultimate Edition, which I do own, which apparently add another like 2 hours or so. And I am going for like a 100% completion, so I'm expecting a total of probably 25 hours to be generous because I'm slow and stupid. I think that it fits well with the amount of effort it takes to complete. There's a good balance. It's curated, but there's plenty of it, and there's a lot of exploring to do, and there's a lot of big, heady brain things. Big game, but not too big. I bought it for $20 off of Amazon, I think, for the complete edition. I might have bought it at like Target or whatever. The fact that a couple of years after release, 4 years after release, it's on the $20 rack, I kind of think is a crime. I would pay full price for this. I've had 0 tech issues at all. There are some bugs I notice here and there, but it's just some janky character model work. The actual hand animation work is really well done. There's no stuttering. I've had no pop-in. For a game that could get away with pop-in as like a troll or like the building's being derpy, I have no pop-in issues at all, which is really unexpected. No crashes, no stutters, nothing. Smooth, flawless, beautiful, like her skin. I would recommend. My gripes are fairly minimal in the grand scheme of things. They just are currently agitating. So if Quantum Break was like a 7, I think was kind of where I ended up on it, this is like an 8.5 or a 9.
Nice.
Very strong upgrade. Still kind of has some of the same problems, which is weird. I'm going to be finishing this. I'm not done for this review, but I will be finishing it before I move on to play other things. Let's just say that. There's no cheesing this one.